that was like, no, we don't. And at that point, I was about to start firing off the whole thing of, oh, if you're a provider as a man and you're unable to provide, oh, it sucks, blah, blah, blah. When you go through a divorce, you lose a bunch of your shit, blah, blah, blah. And before I could even continue that, my other colleague, who's also married and is a mother, also chimes in and is like,
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here to be like Dominic Toretto and talk about family. Because, well, I guess it's been a while since we watched a Fast and the Furious movie. Or at least since a Fast and the Furious movie came out. But anyways, it is what I figured we should be talking about on this episode, because I have a bunch of content that is very family related. And do I expect it to be family friendly? Maybe. But all in all, it does revolve around men and some of the decisions that can be made and are made in relation to family. There is a little bit of money that I might sprinkle in there, but all in all, I hope you do actually enjoy all of it, of which, if you are listening, thank you so much for listening. I hope you listen all the way till the end. And if you do like it, if you don't like it, if you have some feedback, or if you would like to suggest a topic, then the DMs are always open. The socials are in the description below, or at the end of the episode, I will mention them. And I will be more than happy to receive your responses and handle them accordingly. Now, I need to get into the first bit of this episode, and it involves an old man and a bunch of money. Now, I don't know if any of you has watched soaps growing up or watches soapy dramas and shit, but have you ever seen those stories where a poor maid ends up becoming like a very wealthy person because some old person likes them so much that they leave them a bunch of wealth, or they suddenly realize that they are the long lost grandchild or child of one of the wealthier people on the show? Well, I have a situation that is actually very similar to that, but in a very, very interesting twist. Now, there is a gardener that is set to become a billionaire when the heir to the Hermes billion-dollar empire passes on, because dude possibly had some of the best pull-out game on planet Earth. Now, of course, I don't know if the guy was pulling out all the time, or maybe he was gay, or maybe he just didn't want kids or some shit. But the man is around about 86 years old, and he has a fortune of $11 billion, and he wants to leave it to his gardener. Now, I am going to read the story real quick before I can give my full thoughts on this. So, it says, and I quote, Nicholas Puek, the 82-year-old unmarried and childless heir to the Hermes fortune, is planning to adopt his 51-year-old former gardener and handyman who hails from a modest Moroccan family. This move would make the gardener Puek's legal heir, entitling him to half of Puek's estimated $11 billion net worth. Additionally, the gardener is set to inherit properties in Marrakesh, Morocco, and Montreux, Switzerland, valued at nearly $6 million. Puek's decision stems from his estrangement from most of his family and a desire to revoke a previous inheritance agreement with the Isocrates Foundation, a charity he established in 2011. End quote. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but even though I am a straight man, if this man from Morocco, this gardener, wants to be polygamous, I wouldn't mind offering myself up as I identify as a woman type shit. Okay, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. Maybe being a gold digger just doesn't fit well on me. I don't know. Maybe it's just a me thing, but you look at stories like this and it's kind of sad. Not in a bad way, but it's mildly sad, because you look at it, dude has probably spent most of his life accruing that wealth. If not, he inherited that wealth and basically spent most of his life just trying to, ensure that it's grown and it's doing particularly well. The Hermes brand is worth quite a lot of money, and you see that not even just from the brand value of the Hermes bag, which is normally referred to as a Birkin, but just from the man's wealth, which is $11 billion. And you look at dude, he decided to not have any kids. He doesn't seem to have a wife particularly, or maybe he's just the type to pull out. And after all that wealth has been accrued, after living in all that luxury, dude is basically going to give it to a guy that just used to clean his garden and make sure that the plants were watered and the hedges were trimmed. And you look at it, it's kind of sad, Like, you spend most of your life just trying to accrue that wealth. Then you realize, oh shit, I'm gonna die and I'm not gonna have anything. Like, that shit is actually quite wild. But all in all, like, I do actually feel happy for the Moroccan gardener, because the guy is a fairly modest person from a fairly modest family. And it seems like if the guy is being chosen to be like his adopted son at the age of 51, this guy must clearly value him. So he's thinking, you know what, this guy comes from a modest household, you give him access to the fortune, and there's a pretty good chance that, he might actually use it to improve the lives of other people. Or he's just a guy that's been so loyal to me, he is deserving of what it is that I have when I go. And that makes sense. But it also does outline how sad it is that, like, this guy was so estranged from his family that it was like, fuck all of you guys. I will not give you guys a single dime of my luxury when I go. You will not get shit. I'm going to give it to someone else that is not related to all of you money-hungry bastards. Okay, maybe it might not have been that animated, but, you kind of have to think about, like, the point at which he was like, none of these guys are going to get my fortune because, we haven't had a great relationship. Why should they get access to it? Let me just adopt my gardener who's 51 years old and, he can carry along whatever it is that I've had. Like, that is, first of all, a very bold decision. And second of all, you must have run out of family options for you to just select someone like that out of the blues. It's like Bill Gates choosing to give his fortune to the black guy that's supposedly with his daughter. Like, that would be some mad shit though. Absolute mad shit. So if there's anything that I can pull from this story as a teachable moment, minus the fact that, sometimes being a billionaire's gardener can actually make you particularly rich and a billionaire, treat your family members well. Treat your family members well. Because, like, you can avoid having shit like this. But then again, maybe I might be wrong about this, maybe I might be right. Either way, I'm going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode, which is something that I probably have, actually it's not even probably, I have no real jurisdiction over because I've never really experienced it, and that is marriage. Now, normally I would stray away from like a marriage topic, but considering that this is an open-ended question to men, I figured, why the hell not? Now, I was on Reddit not too long ago and I stumbled across this post that someone had posted, and it was a question busy asking what marriage is to men or how men feel about marriage and, like the possible like downsides to it and everything. And a bunch of different people had a bunch of different thoughts about the entire thing, but I felt like it was a particularly interesting question which we should be discussing, or, we should probably find out about. Now, I am going to read the post itself because it was titled, "What is marriage to men?" And I want to at least read the post, then give my thoughts on it, and also maybe even include a couple of comments because there's a little bit here and there that I feel I should probably add to this. So the post reads, and I quote, "Don't you think marriage is a trap for men? If the wife finds out the husband is cheating, she can file for divorce and they split property. Again, if the husband finds out the wife is cheating and tries to file for divorce, he is losing half of his property from something that isn't his fault. The above scenario is when the husband is the provider. When the woman is involved in providing whatever you do as a man, even if you have children, she can chase you away at midnight from so-called home. Isn't it unfair to men?" End quote. Okay, so having seen this, first of all, forgive the English. It's not that I don't know how to read. I was trying to edit some of the English while I was reading on the fly because I feel like some people just fuck up in grammar sometimes. But anyways, that's semantics. We can just leave it at that, provided we kind of have a good gist of what the post is about. I can probably get into a little bit of what I saw in this entire thing. So first off, the comments did give some insight here and there, because it was a little bit more of engagement from both men and I think also women regarding this entire topic. So the first comment that I saw said, and I quote, "Marriage is definitely a trap for men because they lose half of their money. But meanwhile, women usually end up in poverty after divorce because, newsflash, they're not getting whatever you think they're getting. They also usually bear the brunt of childcare and don't have as much disposable time to pursue business interests in the way men have. They're also usually paid less and lose money while off work raising kids. And while married, they're also usually doing more than men. So who exactly is being trapped by marriage? makes me wonder why men are constantly threatening women with being single if marriage was so terrible for men. End quote. Okay, so having seen that, that did kind of bring out some bit of the issue, although it didn't necessarily address the issue of marriage, and how it affects men, or, how men see marriage. It did at least give some idea on, the kind of struggles and how it affects women as well, when you look at marriage as well as divorce. Then the next comment said, and I quote, "Maybe in the Western culture, but here you only split whatever you made together during the marriage in its entirety. They revised that ridiculous law where the woman takes the guy's assets in half ages ago. Yeah, if any of you go to file for divorce, typically y'all will be told to separate first. It's typically over a long time, like 6 years give or take, to avoid the 'we want to be together' after having just finalized it. You can still claim alimony, but forget about splitting his assets 50-50. That clause was completely erased years ago. Nowadays, you're splitting what both of you made together during marriage years. So no, you can't claim his house if you didn't contribute anything to its construction." End quote. And in this instance, it seems like whoever it was that commented was talking about how it's not what you think. At least it's not comparable to how people have been saying it's supposed to be, or how it is, of which I will get to that in a little bit. But now, the final comment, since this one is short, because there was a bunch of them and I just figured I should just address these ones, is someone who said, and I quote, "I only see women leaving marriage with nothing but 3 children and 0 child support. But okay." End quote. Now, before I can continue and give my thoughts on the entire thing, I do need to do the typical disclaimer, even though I don't think it's particularly that necessary, but still I'm just gonna give it, of which, whenever I'm doing a topic related to marriage, I usually like giving this disclaimer where I say, considering that I am not, neither have I ever been married, anything that I say in regards to the institution of marriage is speculation at best and should be taken with a pinch of salt and a tablespoon of aromat. And with that said, and with that disclaimer given, now I can give my thoughts on the entire thing. So a couple of years back, there's a colleague of mine that I was having a conversation with. Okay, first she was busy lamenting about a bunch of the things that she needed to do after work, because I think we're working a weekend at that time. And she was busy talking about how she needs to go and do a bunch of other things, and she needs to prep the kids for school, and there's all of this housework that she needs to do. And at some point, while she was busy talking just openly to me and a bunch of the other colleagues, she just got to a point where she was like, "Hey, Denver, for you men, you guys really benefit quite a bit in marriage." And I was like, "No, we don't." And at that point, I was about to start firing off the whole thing of, if you're a provider as a man and you're unable to provide, it sucks, blah, blah, blah. When you go through a divorce, you lose a bunch of your shit, blah, blah, blah. And before I could even continue that, my other colleague, who's also married and is a mother, also chimes in and is like, "Yeah, you men actually do benefit quite a bit from being married. Like, marriage seems to benefit you guys more than it benefits us." And I was starting to negate all of it. I was like, no, that's not really the case. I don't think you guys are looking at it. And they were kind of just going on at it. And before I could give my 2 cents on the entire thing and how these guys don't entirely understand it, I think we ended up kind of having to break off the whole discussion. Either we were told to do something by a supervisor, or something just changed, or someone had to I don't know, take a phone call or some shit, and the entire discussion kind of shifted and something like that. But I can remember looking at it and I was like, nah, I don't think these guys fully understand. But considering that these were 2 married women, I probably had no real case negating what they were saying, because they had the experience of being married. But then again, they were married women, not men. And I can remember during that point in time, I thought I knew a lot, even though I didn't really know as much as I thought I knew. But then again, I decided to go and look at, if marriage actually has benefits to men, and it's something that I even did before recording this episode. And well, marriage can benefit men quite a bit. It's not even the whole divorce thing, and I will get to that in a moment, because it's not as bad as dudes out here are told on the internet. Yes, people will talk about, when you go through a divorce, you have to give a half your shit, blah blah blah, you lose a house, blah blah. But let's look at some of the stats that benefit people. First of all, married men tend to live longer than unmarried men. That is statistically proven. Then there's another statistic that shows an improved cardiovascular health in married men versus unmarried men. There's better overall health in married men than unmarried men. There is lower risk of mortality, meaning that, there are married men, especially in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and, there's reduced inflammation and shit. And all of this is so good that married men live 10 years longer than unmarried men, which is wild. Also, married men have higher earnings, and it is something that I have mentioned before, especially considering that it's easier for you to get promoted and get into senior positions as a married man because you being married is an easy indicator of good stability and an increased risk, meaning that you will actually put in more work in the job and ensure that you perform properly. Then it's also easier to accumulate wealth as a married man. Then there's also increased happiness to which than their single counterparts. Then there is reduced risk of quote-unquote deaths of despair, where marriage can act as a buffer against such deaths such as suicide and substance abuse, as opposed to if you are an unmarried man. And there is more social support because you're a married individual, and the meaningful relationships are just better with married men as opposed to unmarried men. So basically the statistics are telling you that it's better for you to be married as a man than unmarried. So whatever it is that dude was busy talking about in relation to the whole, it just seems like it's such a bad thing, I think it's just internet speak for the most part, because you look at married men out here, yes, there's the whole threat of like divorce and shit, of which I'm actually happy that one of the commenters brought up the whole it's not what you think everywhere around the world as far as divorce is concerned for men. Because the whole, when you get married and the babe divorces you, she's gonna take half of all of your shit, blah blah blah, of which it is something that I've also said, but it's not like the punishment, or it's not like the terms and conditions are the same across the board. Clearly we've seen a case where you are told that you have to separate for a bunch of years as a married couple, so you're legally separated, I guess. And then at that point, now if you want to file a divorce, then you can do the divorce, but you guys will split from what it is that you accrued when you were married. So when you kind of think about it, it's not as bad as you might think. So it's not like you accrued like 100 mil and then you get married for a couple of months and then the shorty can take 50. So it's not that bad. But all in all, like, I think that most guys, especially online and especially young guys, are sort of talked against the idea of marriage. And it's just not for all the best reasons. And the main thing that they usually go with is the whole idea of, if you get divorced to this shorty, then, you're gonna lose half your shit. Which, of course, while it could happen in some places, it's not like it happens everywhere. And also, it's like you're anticipating the divorce before the marriage. It's like you anticipating the kind of shit that you'll have before you go have spicy food. Like, if you're into spicy food, it's not like you're gonna be looking at it thinking, you know what, I don't know if I'll go, because like I'll have to start thinking about how much tissue I'll use and how many shits I'm gonna take. Like, you never hear people doing that, but you find people busy thinking and talking about divorce even before they're anywhere near married. Hell, they're probably not even dating at that time. So it does seem like people tend to be very, or should I say, a lot of men online tend to be very pessimistic about the concept of marriage. Yet clearly on a statistical level, and I could even argue objectively, for most guys, they would much rather be married than not. And truth is, when you look at the concept of marriage, if I were to define it for most guys, it's not even a case of, you're better off single than married. I would probably just say that marriage is work. And yes, I know I haven't been married before, it's not really my place to say, but I've listened to people speak about it, and the main defining characteristic is that marriage is work. It's not a bed of roses, it's not all blissful and you guys don't do shit. It's actual work. You have to put in a bunch of effort into being like married together with someone. Otherwise, your relationship, your marriage can very easily fall apart, especially when you bring in kids and shit. And for you as a man, when you get married, essentially, you're not taking a duty as assumed. Now it's properly defined that you are provider and protector. When you were dating, when you're in a relationship, when you're courting, it was mostly assumed. Like, it was one of those ones where you took it up because, it's mostly par for the course. Like, yes, it's not like it's your absolute duty. It's one of those ones where you're like, because I want to be married to this person, I kind of want to assume these roles because it kind of comes with the territory. But, like, it's not like it's written in stone. But now it is written, not necessarily in stone, but it's on paper that now you are supposed to provide and protect for your partner and for the potential family that you have. You are supposed to guard the reputation of said family that you now lead on an external level, whether that requires you to make internal changes, whether that requires you to handle external issues. Like, that's essentially something that you're going to have to be doing. And if or when you have kids, the number of duties that you have actually increases, just the same way it increases for your wife who now has become a mother. Because not only are you the other parent, but you are now the North Pole, the kind of pointing star or the model of what good, strong character is supposed to be for probably everyone in the family, if not your kids as well. So if you have, boys, or if you have a boy, if you have girls, if you have a girl, like, they will look up to you as a beacon of what good character is, or just character in general. So you'll find that if you have a son, they will look up to you as the kind of man that they should probably aim to be, and the potential partner that they would be for their woman. So, you should also treat your wife and mother to your children particularly well. If you have girls, they will look at you not just as a beacon of the kind of character that they should probably have, but also the kind of person that they should look for when they are looking for a partner much later down the line in their lives, as when they become grown-ups. And all of those things do require quite a bit of work, both internally as an individual and also internally in your marriage, I believe. And essentially, in my opinion, that's how I think of marriage. That's how I think of the idea of being a married man. And maybe I'm wrong. And like, it's a lot of work, but it's not like it's completely impossible. There's a lot of people who manage to pull it off, and there's people that manage to pull it off and they look good while doing it. I'm not saying that they aren't, but essentially it's not like it's absolutely impossible. But for the most part, I do believe that the only way that you can ever really pull off either one or both of the roles I've just stated is if you want to and if you choose to. Because if you don't make the choice to, or if you aren't ready, as most people would probably say, then you might end up being a particularly shit example of a parent or just a spouse, if I can call it that. And while it looks like it's a lot of work, I feel like the alternative isn't that much better, especially as you grow older as a man. And I do see examples of that a lot, because like, guys kind of make it look as though being a single bachelor in your 40s is such a great thing, and you can find whatever babe you want, you've got money, looks aren't too bad, you might be looking good as a silver fox and shit, and you can bag a bunch of babes. But you realize, for the guys that do that, even the ones that look good as they're doing that, it's not like they're doing all that great personally, at least from a lot of the examples that I've seen. Because you look at such guys, like, especially when you're going past the age of 35 going towards 40, most of your guy friends, not unless if you keep a crew of dudes that do not want to get married or just chose to be baby daddies and didn't want to like actually get married to someone or like have some sort of long-term relationship, you find that most of your guy friends are either married or just have kids, and they have to pay attention to those kids. So your lived experience is going to be different, and it very easily becomes harder for you to stay as part of that group because they have a different set of issues to you. Yes, maybe you guys could meet up for the occasional game here and there, but if they're not able to show up for half of the games in an entire year because they need to take care of their kids, or their kid is having this and this issue, or they need to spend time with their children or with their family, or they're taking their wife somewhere, this, that, and the other, or maybe even their long-term girlfriend if they choose not to get married, like, you find that it can sometimes feel a little bit lonely, and it is very, very easy and very, very expected for someone at that stage to want companionship. And I can get someone saying that they don't want to be held together by a legal contract that is enforced by the law. Maybe to some people that might feel like handcuffs, but I feel like minus that and, the kind of quote-unquote enforceability of it, I feel like the contract of marriage can actually be particularly good and is actually quite beneficial. And if anything, like even the guys that over time aren't married, they usually want some version of a long-term partnership that, even though it's not called marriage, carries a lot of similarities to it, in that you're with someone for multiple years, in that you can stick with someone and you can have something solid, and you guys can try and grow together and be together and just have companionship as marriage was originally set up for. Like, you can kind of see those similarities there. You can kind of see that at the end of the day, no one wants to die alone and everyone wants to be with someone. And finding love is a particularly good thing. Yes, maybe you might not find it in the same exact way as everyone else or at the same exact time as a lot of people around you, but it is something that people genuinely want. And I think, if anything, that should probably tell you that marriage is actually not such a bad option for most guys. And to kind of conclude all of this, let me just say, marriage is work. Like I said earlier, marriage is work, and being a husband is a duty. But in as much as I can speak for it and I can speak about the pros, the cons, and what it could be, I don't think you should get into it if you're not ready or if you don't choose to. Because if you don't feel like you want to be married and you're forced to be, or if you don't feel like you've chosen it, or if you're not ready, then the results usually tend to be pretty bad, more often than not. And you find that just the same way, if someone who's in marketing is given a finance job, for the most part, if they don't like it, if they didn't exactly choose it themselves, then the results are probably going to be shit. So for the most part, if you have chosen to do it, if it is something that you do want to do, then go ahead, do it. If anything, I feel like if you are pretty good, if you are of good, strong character, and if you put effort into it, you can produce some particularly great results. Whether in the name of children, whether in the name of just a good marriage in general, or just a good family. At the end of the day, I feel like if you have chosen it and you do give it as much effort as you feel you can produce some particularly great results as a person. Although, then again, considering that I haven't been married and, I haven't lived long enough to say that I know too many examples here and there, maybe I might be wrong. Maybe I'm just chatting a bunch of shit. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG. It is at the BreakTime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the BreakTime Podcast. On X, it is at BagakaTheD. And on Bluesky, it is at the BreakTimePod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.